But yeah, before we get into the meat of things, I just wanted to say that, usually during this slot, we usually have the weekly Q4 webinars that are more based on operation and supply chain updates. However, the reason why our group is called EcommOps is because we also talk about operations as well. So everything that's not exactly just pure marketing strategy. And I actually think that these days, especially thinking about how to manage your Facebook account itself is a very important part of running your operations. This is a very, very separate thing than how do you optimize your ads, how do you optimize, like your creatives and things like that. So this is going to be a super valuable one for everyone. And again, let me just wait a few minutes, make sure that our team member is sending out to everyone. 1 second. Actually, John, maybe tell us a little bit, where are you based right now?
I am outside Washington, D.C. We actually we grabbed lunch 2 weeks ago, just about.
Yeah, it was great, by the way. And to everyone here, that was actually why I invited John, to this webinar, because he was telling me some stuff that was really cutting edge stuff. I mean, one of the things that I've known already is that, and probably a lot of people know, is that Facebook changes all the time. So what you heard from experts like 6 months ago are probably not going to be exactly the case right now. And yeah, that's why I invited John here, because he was telling me some just, really, really new stuff that I think that not a lot of people have been talking about. All right. So yeah, so it's 5 minutes in, so we can go ahead and get started again. Anyone who is joining, this is John Castro here. He is an expert in dealing with Facebook accounts, Facebook BMs. Comment below if you're here, comment below with any specific questions as we discuss, and we'll make sure to answer them. All right, yeah, so John, maybe first let's get started with, tell us a little bit about your background. What have you been doing, and why should people trust you?
Yeah, so I come from lead gen years ago. That got me started on Facebook ads, started working with brands, some e-commerce brands. I saw how much money we can make them, like 10xing their sales just by running simple ad campaigns. This is 2016, 2017. So I wanted to scratch my own itch for it. And I started doing drop shipping 2017 going into 2018. And that's basically what I've been doing since. And then as we all saw, just what is it, November, or I guess 2019, it was 2019, yeah, for the US elections. Or no, yeah, 2019, or am I losing I'm losing my mind with coronavirus.
It's been 2020, I believe, right?
Right, but the elections took place Q4 2019 or 2020. Yeah. Either, yeah, it was 2020, and it wiped out everyone. Right, I remember there was a day, it was either the day after or the day before the election, where every single person running ads at any reasonable scale got shut down. And I'd actually had a leg up on this, because right when the pandemic hit, Facebook made some major changes, and maybe 10 to 20% of my friends in the e-commerce space had all their accounts wiped out, their profiles restricted, business managers, and just started going nuts. So I got hit pretty hard really early on before it became widespread. So that led me to do all sorts of crazy stuff, like buying like 20 of these little phones, making profiles look like your friends would walk into my house and they'd be like, "Oh, are you like dealing drugs? You got like 20 phones. This is super sketchy." I was buying profiles off of Craigslist from people in my area, getting ripped off. It was just nuts. And there was not a lot of information around this. I was testing all the websites, SoFarm, Account Farm, all these different places where you could buy different things. And there wasn't really any information on what to do, how to manage it, how to avoid triggering Facebook. So I pretty much became obsessed over this, because I couldn't generate income for myself without being able to solve these problems. Right. And we were all kind of like all my buddies in the dropshipping space, we were all kind of learning this just by, it was like the Wild West, right? We were all just trying different things to see what did and didn't stick. We're like, oh, this one little thing totally triggers Facebook. And it's just some like random action that you would normally take. And people have a theory about it, but no one actually had concrete evidence. So I started testing this at scale, where like, if I pulled up my multi-login account, in case you're unaware of what multi-login is and you're listening in, multi-login basically allows you to host multiple browser sessions, each with a unique IP address, basically showing Facebook that they're 10 different devices, for example, each has a one profile versus one computer with 10 profiles, which is a big trigger for Facebook. So I started testing things at scale over the last 6 to 12 months pretty heavily to scratch my own itch, to take care of my own accounts, to stay active on Facebook so I could keep running my stores. And then about this year, 2021, January going into March, it spread like a cancer, right? So that little blip on the radar that happened right at the US elections almost a year ago to date, actually, that corrected itself. Most people got their accounts back within a day or two. Everything just kind of came back alive. But this year, it's gone up like this. It's been insane, and it's getting harder and harder month by month. Facebook is regularly making updates, regularly making changes. And I guess I'm in this weird position where it's like I a lot of bad luck met a lot of good luck at the same time, because I had so much experience just trying different things of getting new accounts, warming them up, continuing to use them, strategically setting up your business managers, ad accounts, pages, profiles, so that if something does get disabled, shut down, restricted, it doesn't put you out of business overnight. Because that's really what we don't want to buy profiles. We just want to have confidence we're going to wake up tomorrow and not have all of our ads shut down. That's what we care about. So I've been helping people repeat this process over the last 9 months. And it's been the highest highs and the lowest lows, because when something changes, we basically have to go to the back to the lab and start split testing all sorts of weird theories and what is triggering Facebook. How do we solve this? How do we work around this? What's the next hack? Because there's always hacks and little tricks in the algorithm that maybe last a month, maybe last a year. It just depends. So that's where we are today, man. We just went through another big update last week while I was on vacation in Vegas. So of course I started getting all these DMs like, hey, that thing's not working anymore. What do I do? All my stuff's breaking again. It's just, it's part of the process, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And let me actually, so now it's Q4. It's right in the middle of the sales season. We're right at the start, at least. And let me tell everyone here a little bit about last Q4. I mean, obviously you faced it as well. A lot of people faced it. And we at EcommOps, and we work with a lot of clients who I mean, we saw the order volume. I mean, it didn't go down, right? But normally Q4, it's massive for everyone. And all of our clients, they were ready. I mean, like, they had huge targets. We're gonna ramp up big. And just last year was brutal. The elections and just the Facebook algorithm going haywire, and so many people who are doing like nothing wrong, like almost perfect feedback scores, random restrictions, and then you appeal to them, and they apologize. It's our fault. So hey, like, I've been spending $2,000 a day in ads right now, but like you shut us down, right? So this is also why, I mean, this is also really important for this Q4 as well, right? Because like, look, you can do everything right. You can have the perfect creatives, you can have the perfect marketing strategy, and randomly, like, you have issues with Facebook, that's just going to just completely crush your Q4. So this is why, I think it's super valuable. And I also just wanted to just, kind of note that John's been a client of ours. So he's the real deal, like there's a lot of folks out there who are, farming profiles, for example, outsourcing it to, some folks in a cheaper country, but they don't actually have that experience. They don't actually know what it is to actually run a scaling, very successful store. So John actually has that experience. So he's not just he's not just like a Facebook profile expert. He's actually a Facebook marketing expert as well. And I know that you had done a lot of affiliate marketing before as well. So, I mean, you've been in the Facebook ad game, way earlier. I think that you were actually actually, when did you actually first start, dabbling in any kind of Facebook ads?
2013, I was doing lead gen. I own a local gym. So I had to basically find a way to get people in the door, and I started running Facebook. I can't imagine what cost per click and stuff was then. It must have been pennies compared to what it is now.
Yeah. So hey, back in those days, I think it was a lot easier, but just to show that, John almost has 10 years, 8 years of experience with Facebook ads. So he knows what he's talking about. All right. So now let's get into the meat of it. All right. So what is going on right now? I mean, first, let's just start with we always hear about, whether it's our clients or in various Facebook groups, getting restrictions for no reason. So, maybe you could talk about what is actually going on What do you see happening with the people you work with as well?
A lot of moving parts, and it is always changing. But the I want to keep this as very initially as general, because we could go down like a rabbit hole if we get too specific with scenarios, right? So general ideas, Facebook, the pattern and trend we're seeing over the last 2 to 3 months is if you take any new business manager, ad account, profile, and page in any kind of combination and try to start running conversion campaigns, especially versus over lead generation, for example, Facebook seems to be forcing every asset, by asset, I mean profile, page, business manager, ad account, to restrict or disable if you're jumping into ads, right? Or even if you're doing like a quote unquote light warm up. So what we found is that identity confirmation seems to be inevitable. Restrictions seem to be inevitable. It's just a percentage of those are going to recover. So that's like the big downside is typically what I find when I start with, because I'm starting with a lot of people that have done big numbers in the past, and then they had all their accounts and stuff wiped out. So they're basically starting from scratch as they rebuild it for them. So the pattern we're finding is it doesn't matter if you go faster and warm things up like less, or go slower and take a month of warming your accounts, everything is getting restricted, but a percentage of things will recover if you do the right things for recovery. The best thing is always going to be something that has been running or was created 6, 12 months ago, 3 years ago. Nothing is better than that, right? So for example, I am also part of a marketing agency as well, where we work specifically with e-commerce brands. We've got one brand that these guys started up in the pandemic when they lost their jobs. They found a really cool Ollie product. They did bulk import and they private label this thing. And we're spending over $10,000 to $15,000 today on Facebook ads year round, right? So this is 18 months in. But if we had tried to do that with the same product, with inventory in the US, private labeling, custom content today, they were going to absolutely be like put through the same kind of filtering that any new advertiser is going to go through. It's very unfortunate because in my opinion, Facebook's broken, right? But the general trend is if you want to have less headaches, you need things that have been running for some time, but that's like impossible unless you've been running things already and they haven't been disabled. So that's kind of like the catch-22, but that's the general state of Facebook right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hey, we have plenty of clients who have like very old accounts and they're not really facing the same issues. But again, it's neither here or there, right? Because like there are a lot more folks out there who are ramping up new accounts as well, new profiles, and like you kind of mentioned, a lot of big folks are maybe restarting this year and facing these issues. So when you actually said that, okay, so like if you had to just roughly say like for someone like a relatively new profile, new account ramping up, like how often are they going to face these issues? Is it close to 100%?
It's pretty close. What you're going to find is everything is going to get checkpointed, right? So if you think of it and approach it in that sense, and you start with 10 profiles, is what I always recommend, at least 10, then it's not going to be like a kiss of death when one profile or 5 profiles get restricted. You're like, okay, well, I kind of expected this. These other ones are fine for now. So you need to work this in volume. I always give the example. Imagine like you're going to war, right? And you're about to enter the battlefield. You're not going to enter with one soldier and hope you win. Let's just say you're going to win the battle, right? You're going to lose soldiers along the way. So if you approach in that way and you do this in volume, you're going to have some things stick, and then some things will also recover that die. And the interesting thing is, I find when a profile, business manager, ad account, or page recovers from a disabling or checkpoint or restriction, they're actually stronger and they're less likely to get hit in the future, which is awesome too.
Yeah, I want to ask about that a little bit later, but first I wanted to confirm, what are the general categories of issues that people are facing? I mean, we talked about identity confirmation. Are there other kind of categories of issues that you're seeing?
So first one, profile level is usually going to be profile gets restricted from advertising, forces you to submit your ID, identity confirmation fails. We'll talk about the solution on that in a little bit. Second is going to be your ad account gets instantly disabled when you start running traffic on it, PP, like campaign, anything. When you start spending money on it, right? And this used to be pretty easy to avoid. Basically, you just move slower, you spend at lower amounts, you don't add the card right away, little things like that. But it seems to be happening either way. So it's either going to be the ad account just gets disabled. It's just like a regular disabling for violating policy, or it's a security, like a security flag, and you need to basically appeal it. And then typically they'll respond by asking you to submit a screenshot of your bank statement showing the last four of the card and a matching charge from Facebook, right? Pages. This is a big one. So pages, if you make a new page today and you start using it today, it's almost guaranteed to get disabled instantly, even if you're running literally puppy pictures. So when we do these like new account preparations for clients, or even when we're guiding our own clients, we always say like, do something super simple, like a puppy picture, right? But the thing is, it's the behavior of using the page. It's not what you actually advertise, which makes no sense, but it's the best I've been able to figure out from this. So having an older page that was created 3 weeks ago, 3 days ago, just not today, is really the best temporary solution for this. When it comes to business managers, it's really kind of hit or miss. Like we're probably setting up 30 new business managers a week for clients. And we're seeing like some of these will get disabled and some of these won't. I don't really understand like a specific pattern. We're doing the same behaviors and actions with each.
Yeah, and so actually, let me just chime in a little bit there, because I have some very good friends who either work at Facebook or used to work at Facebook as developers before. And one of the realities about Facebook is that the development process tends to just constantly change. I think that obviously everyone here uses Facebook. You always notice like the UI changing, new features changing, and like that's fine. That's all about like what Facebook is all about, always making changes to hopefully improve. But they also do that with the algorithms as well, which creates a problem where stuff gets pushed out. And I'll be honest, it's not just you or I not really understanding how it all works and why these things are happening. Like even the Facebook development team, forget about Facebook customer service, by the way, they have no idea what's going on, right? Even the Facebook development team doesn't exactly know how the algorithm works. I'm sure they kind of come with, a good, they're trying to do right? But because like it's such a black box even to them, like then you have all these situations where no one exactly knows how it works. And it sounds like, it's a lot of it is just about, okay, like we'll keep testing, right? Like keep figuring out the strategies, adapt when they stop working. And by the way, this is something that I want to emphasize, is that like if a strategy doesn't work, with something like this, it doesn't mean that strategy is crap, right? It doesn't mean that it's just completely wrong. It's because Facebook actually does adapt. But related to that, you got to keep up to date with the strategies. Then you have to try to keep up as much as possible. It's going to be impossible to predict what's going to happen before the fact, but that's why the constant, in a way, figuring out these Facebook account issues, kind of like testing Facebook ads, right? It's just like, you just got to test and see what happens and how the algorithm actually works, right? But, so on that point, though, I think this is something that I found very interesting in our conversation. So tell us a little bit more about like how you think about testing against these strategies and figuring out what's working, what's not.
Well, we've got a pretty simple step-by-step process we follow from first login attempt, we get our proxies set up, which are going to show different IP addresses. We plug those into our browser sessions, which imagine you have like 5 or 10 Google Chromes on your computer through a software that shows a unique IP address from each browser, right? We'll log in with our accounts. I'm more aggressive, so typically I'll jump straight into the business manager. But like typically those specific points, you're either going to see a trigger happen, and right away if it bans you for the most part, right? And then if it doesn't, at least not immediately. So just looking for those feedback points at every like minor and major action, right? So minor actions would be like adding a credit card. Normal action, you need to add a credit card to advertise. At one point, that was a huge trigger. Every time I would add a credit card to a business manager, it would insta-ban it with no option to appeal. It made 0 sense. Like, why would you do that? Who came up with this? Inviting profiles to the business manager can and has been a trigger and is becoming a trigger again. Sometimes it's when you add the first person consistently, you see that pattern. Sometimes it's when you add 3 people at once or 4 people at once, right? So it's just a matter of pushing the system to see where it triggers and breaks, and then testing against that. That's it. It's just like, it's like a funnel. It actually is exactly like a funnel going from new profile to conversion campaigns at scale.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. And a quick thing, everyone who's just joining recently, we have John Castro here, who's an expert in Facebook accounts and BM management. Comment below if you have any questions around Facebook restrictions. Comment below if you have any issues recently, actually, and hopefully John can shed some light into some of that as well. All right. So continuing on, so very interesting. Kind of you talked about it in kind of like a funnel, right? So simply speaking, let's say someone is like starting up their account right now. What would be kind of like the rough step-by-step of that funnel until hopefully it gets somewhat stable?
Cool. So let's go through it. I would get 10 profiles to start, because I'm assuming best case 2 or 3 of them die, worst case 7 of them die, right? Or at least temporarily are restricted. I would get multi-login. You can choose an alternative such as Go Login, Incognition, cheaper free options. Multi-login is probably the best, in my opinion. You get your proxies. Simple proxies from my private proxy are very inexpensive. You're not going to pay by the gigabyte. You're going to save a ton of money by not using Illuminati or Bright Data. And then you're going to make your first login attempt with those profiles. Okay. Little trick too. And the profile sellers you'll find, which we'll talk about as well, they're going to recommend you actually don't just go to facebook.com when you open up the browser. For some reason, this is one of those stupid triggers, right? If you go to m.facebook.com or mbasic.facebook.com, it shows like an old mobile version of Facebook, and it's less likely to trigger the profile on your first login attempt. Really bizarre. None of this stuff makes any sense. It just is what it is. Once you're logged in, if you want to be more aggressive, you can try to go straight into a business manager, make your ad account, run ads. Right now, Facebook is absolutely tightening up. We're considering expanding out our funnel as a whole. And the general rule of thumb is longer is going to never hurt more than going faster with any of these actions, right? So to play it more conservative, I'm going to give these recommendations, especially if we're going with the example of someone new, right? So you got your profiles, you're logged in on your browser sessions, and your multi-login, Go login, whatever you chose. Next day, you join the business manager, or you do light activity and then delay joining the business manager a day or 2, right? By the time you join the business manager, you want to generate the first ad account unless it already came with it. You wait a day, then you come back into the profile. Here's the trick. You with a page, okay, ideally a page that was created prior, because this can be a trigger in itself. You do a boosted post from the page, not inside the ads manager. You go to the page, you go to a post that was created hopefully before. You select the ad account from the new business manager and you do a boosted post, $10, 2-day lifetime. Simple. 2 days goes by, then you enter the ads manager, attached to the business manager, the same one we did the boosted post on. You do PPE campaign, $10 a day. Longer you let it run, probably less likely it's going to flag, but not necessarily. I'd say 2 to 3 days to be safe. So we're looking at probably about day 7 or 8 here. Okay. And then at that point, you make a decision. Do you want to push into conversions, or do you want to give it a few more days? Do you want to add a little bit more activity? This is where it gets kind of gray. This is where you could do it with 10 business managers. And then sometimes 3 of them will get killed. 7 will be fine. Sometimes it's the other way around. This is where there's no consistency, right? But the general idea, this is what you need to do. You could try jumping straight into conversions. I have had that work a few times. I just don't recommend it. It's going to get expensive, right? Because you're going to be burning more assets, more profiles, more business managers. Now, the shortcut, and I say this not to go off topic here, but we are in Q4. I'd imagine if anyone in this group has had a pretty good level of experience with e-commerce, right? So you probably know how to do media buying. That's not the question. It's just not being able to do it. So if you're using agency accounts, which this deep in Q4, I probably would strongly advise it. You at this point, you could, in the meantime, I should say, you could have had your agency account provider add the ad account into that same business manager, maybe 2 or 3 business managers, just to diversify, which is a really good idea. And at this point, you would launch your conversion campaign on that agency account, and you should be good to go for the most part. Things that will come up, I can almost guarantee. Potentially the page gets disabled, and that would specifically be because it's a new page and you made it 5 days ago versus 5 weeks ago, right? Mm-hmm. Profile gets restricted, very likely, very possible, not guaranteed. It's going to force you to confirm the identity. Identity will almost surely fail. The trick is to join an asset that is allowing you to appeal, but requires you to confirm the identity. So picture that. Profile failed identity confirmation. There's no option to appeal. This is the final decision, but profile is attached to a business manager ad account or page that you can appeal, but first requires identity confirmation. That's the hack to do another identity confirmation with a high success rate. That makes sense. So these are just things that are going to show up some way, shape, or form going forward as you're running conversions. This is also why it's super important you have multiple profiles, multiple business managers, multiple ad accounts, whether you go agency account or regular ad account. Okay. So that you can picture this, like, let's say Facebook tightens up even more and none of the hacks to recover failed identity confirmation work. If you have 3 profiles, even as admins on that business manager, and you're running on an agency ad account, which is the most guaranteed way to be able to scale sooner than later. If one gets restricted, fails identity confirmation, you got another 2 on there. Maybe you use one to add a few extra profiles as backups, and then you advertise with the other. You keep going until you hit another checkpoint. I know it's a game of cat and mouse, but this is the best solution. Like, this is it, because their system is broken. There is not another option at this point. But the idea is, you want to think of it as, how can I keep the life of my campaigns running and not figuratively get attached to assets, profiles, pages, business managers, ad accounts.
That makes total sense. Now, agency accounts is going to be a huge topic. So I want to ask you a little bit more about just how those work. But before that, I want to ask, like, is there at some point where you're safe, like doing all this stuff?
So if the safest is going to be like the example I gave with the higher spend brand that I manage. Like, all I use like farmed accounts to manage the media buying on that are attached to those business managers, right? I have 0 issues with that. And I think a large part of it is because we got going on those a year ago, right? So we have that longer history. The page's high feedback score because it's shipped out of their own like warehouse here in Northern Virginia, So I think that there's a lot of positives in that example, but that's not very common. That's hard to replicate if you're starting from scratch, right? So I think that, but I mean, the reality is, the sad reality is, they could get disabled tomorrow for nothing because of the state of Facebook today. So I wouldn't say, I think that it's just more like a sliding scale of like risk versus less risk. I don't think there's ever like a safe spot. I think as long as you always have backups and contingencies in place, you're going to be okay. But the BS never does end from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So we'll get to the point, there's a big question about, okay, how do you where do you find these accounts, and talk about agency accounts. But before that, I just want to answer a quick question actually from Stefan or Stefan. What would you think ad creative is the most important now since the iOS 14.5 update? Now, so I'm going to answer part of that actually, because part of that is how the effectiveness of your marketing campaign, right? So I've been talking to a lot of our big clients, and from the marketing side of things, yes, ad creatives, they were always important, but they're even more important now after the 14.5 update. Tracking is haywires, optimization haywires. By the way, a lot of the big guys, they just use wide open interest targeting, like literally like 18 to 65, all US or, worldwide, whatever, and just focus on the creatives. And that's one of the strategies that's been working out really well. So yes, ad creatives, super, super important from the marketing standpoint. Now, John, I'd love to ask you as well, though, is because part of trying to at least reduce issues is probably also how you think about the ad creatives, right? Like, are there triggers that you want to avoid in the ad creative itself that people should know about?
I think it's a given with the cool stuff that used to work in 2019 with skincare products, beauty products. Unless you are one of those highly established brands with long history, high spend for the last year or two, I wouldn't even, on regular ad accounts with creatives that show skin, that focus on close-ups with like beauty stuff, shapewear, those are the best selling products and the easiest to get like cheap conversions on. But the trade-off is you're absolutely going to lose regular ad accounts and have things go down because remember, your stuff will get wrecked doing things the right way, with what I outlined in my process. But if you do things that are against policy on top of that, it's like, I've tested this and it's like, I get wiped out if I try this with regular ad accounts. So yes, like you absolutely have to follow ad policy. Anyone I work with, I tell them like, I can't guarantee your accounts stay up, even if we do everything right, but I can guarantee they will go down very quickly if you do things you shouldn't be doing from the start.
Got it. Makes sense. And then actually, just to answer a couple quick other questions. So there's a question on, is there a solution for the feedback score? I'm assuming having your feedback too low.
I'll share one hack. And I haven't tested this at high scale. Collectively on the page, $7,000 was spent on ecom products. And typically at that point, if you have about 7K in ad spend, you would usually see the feedback score starting to hit. So there was a hack that we used losing track of the years with Corona, 2019 into 2021. Right. So there was a no feedback score hack where basically you create a new page, you run an active like campaign or PPE, you request that the page be classified as non-e-commerce, which would remove the ability to score. It gets approved because you haven't run conversion campaigns. Then you start running conversion campaigns and there was no feedback score. So that actually, any page you used starting this year in about February, March, will get hit with the infamous circumvention, right? Which was a pain. It would wreck everything. It was like a poison and a cancer to your profiles, business managers, anything attached, right? So I actually stopped using it. One of my students told me in June or July that he started using it for a lead gen, just to, because you still get like a page quality score, even if you're not shipping physical products out. So I didn't want to jump into doing it with e-commerce, but what I did, I got access to agency accounts that can whitelist your page. Only one I've only found, they're out of China. It's the only one I found that can do this. And they have a really crazy special relationship with Facebook. And they actually do this because the ad account they assigned to my business manager, they whitelisted the page and they whitelisted the domain for me. If I try to publish ads with a different page or with a different domain, I get this weird error from Facebook that I've never seen in my life. And I've worked with probably over 1,000 different business managers at this point. So the account is actually special, like set up in a special way internally with Facebook. Whatever they have, that relationship they have with Facebook is one of a kind. So what I did was I got the page approved, new page. They whitelisted it internally with Facebook. I came back, I did my little hack that worked. You could see it on my YouTube channel. If you just YouTube search, I'll probably pop up as the first video, how to not have a feedback score with your fan page. And then the page got approved as non-e-commerce, but it's also protected because it's whitelisted. So it can't get restricted for circumvention and it can't get a feedback score, right? So that's the best solution, like rock solid solution I found. On the other hand, There are solutions like CFS solutions. There are ways to manipulate the feedback score, but I've been told that they've actually been telling their customers it's not working as well lately.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. It's well, hey, one other hack, by the way, is to just just run a good brand, get good fulfillment, sell quality products. I mean, for example, our EcommOps clients, a lot of the old ones, they have like 4.5, perfect 5 scores. And obviously, look, one thing I will say though is that just because you have a high feedback score doesn't really mean that you're in the safe from Facebook. However,
Right.
if you have a low feedback score, then obviously you're going to be in trouble, right? So look, it's not obviously pointing fingers at anyone, but if you have a low feedback score, then there's probably something else that is going on, whether it's your product quality or your shipping speeds as well. Definitely, by the way, as well, don't set your estimated delivery time to be a week, you know what I mean? Just set it to 6 weeks, whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter, and the customers get the survey a little bit later as well. All right, so I'm going to answer we're going to talk about one more question about feedback scores, and then we'll talk about how do we actually deal with profiles and agency accounts. All right, so did you have experience with custom conversion events to avoid surveys for customers that buy from the Facebook page?
I've seen YouTube videos, because I'm a student myself, right? I've seen YouTube videos of how to set that up, and people say it works. But those videos also were 2 years old. I haven't tested myself. I don't have the best answer, but from my understanding, Facebook still tracks the conversion internally. So you're still going to hit with the feedback score.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. Someone asked you about the name of your YouTube channel. I mean, I think after this, maybe just comment, the name of your channel here, and check it out as well. All right. So now we're talking about 10 profiles. We're talking about agency accounts, right? Now there are I gotta say, there's so much noise out there. I probably had 15 or 20 just various companies reaching out to me and hey, we're selling profiles, we want to work with you guys. And I just never honestly trusted most of them, because I mean, I generally kind of know what they're doing as well, right? And it's so high variance. I mean, look, even if they're kind of creating profiles the right way, they could still get restricted. So if you don't do the right things, and I mean, I heard about clients hey, I got the service, yeah, they offer fee replacements, but it doesn't matter when every single profile is going down within the day, right? So how do you how do you find these profiles? How do you trust what is going on?
I kid you not. I literally go into different Facebook groups. You could just do a Facebook search, business manager, and you'll find resellers who guys who are generating these accounts, these profiles, and then they're verifying them and then reinstating them and then they're reselling them. So that's I get people ask me this every day, and I can't recommend the main 3 guys I go to, because I'm already sharing that list with my 100+ clients. So if I 10x that, those guys won't even be able to service myself, let alone my clients, right? They're going to be overloaded. So and I'm always testing new sellers too. So that's the best advice I have, is you have to do your own, you have to kind of put your own money on the line a little bit and test it and see who you can trust. Because I've been scammed, for every person that has delivered on what they promised, I've also been scammed by one, right? But this is what I signed up for. This is what I help people with, is I'd rather risk my own money to vet the sellers to then recommend to my group. Right. So that's the dirty work you have to do if you want to find good sellers. But there's a lot of good people that are reselling profiles. I mean, imagine a lot of these guys are from Pakistan, Vietnam. These people are not making very much money. And then they suddenly are able to generate digital products, right? Profiles, and resell them for $20, $30. It's really cool. It's really awesome that they're able to do that. And these guys are just cranking these profiles out at scale with virtual machines and everything. So just work through them, find someone you trust, test a few different people. Don't spend more than, let's say, $30 per profile if you're buying US profiles. If you're buying Vietnamese, Thai, Indonesian, don't spend more than $15 to $20. I had a guy DM my Instagram actually this morning on the way back from the gym, and this guy was like, hey man, I've got reinstated US profiles, I'm selling them, they're only $170 each. And I was like, Excuse me. So there's a lot of people out there. Follow those recommendations on where to find them. Any Facebook group, I guarantee you, any e-commerce Facebook group, if you just do the search function, profiles for sale, or you just do what I recommended, search for Facebook groups named business manager, resale, whatever. Find a few people that you can trust, test out, know you're going to get scammed, buy a few at a time. Don't spend more than what I recommend. And you'll find some really quality people that will genuinely take care of you.
How much money did you waste roughly where, like you get scammed out of? I mean, just a rough number.
Scammed somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000.
Well, hey,
just buying stuff, just trying stuff. Like, because I remember it was the Wild West a year ago when most people didn't really need this. So I mean, just in my local market and Craigslist, like people from DC that would I would put up a post, hey, I want to buy your Facebook profile. I probably lost like $2,000 just getting ripped off, like with people like, it was a mess, man. But
Jeez. No, but hey, testing is important, obviously. Okay, now agency accounts. Everyone hears a lot about agency accounts, but like first, like what are they and how do they work, and how do you find them?
So imagine a high spend marketing agency out of somewhere in Asia, somewhere in Europe, somewhere in Latin America. There's some in the US, and they have such a high spend volume. Like, I guess that'd be 10 million plus, some of them 100 million plus per month. And this is collectively from the clients they manage, right? So they're just burning ad spend internally inside their business manager through their client accounts. They get put in these tiers that us peasants, you and I and everyone else on this call, even though we're not peasants, but you get what I'm saying, in comparison and relative ad spend, these marketing agencies get special privileges with Facebook. Like that Chinese one I work through, for example, it's effed up, like the privileges they get that we'll never have access to unless we work through them. So what these large spend agencies are doing, they found another revenue stream is leasing ad accounts to people like you and I who can't stay alive on regular ad accounts or can't scale hard, right? Because new accounts, even if you warm them up properly and you have verified business managers, you're going to have daily spend limits, and you're not going to be able to spend, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 within a few weeks per day, right? So these large scale agencies will lease out an ad account. Typically, it's on a different fee structure, either percentage based for every dollar you spend. The cost will usually go down the higher volume, anywhere from it. At one point when these first came out a year ago, it was like $10K to start up just to get access to it, and then 10% of every dollar you spend. It was insane. Jeez. So the market shifted a lot. Now you're seeing typically like 5 to 7% the spend, depending on your daily spend volume, as low as 3 to 5% at high volume. The guys I work through, they charge a flat rate. So it's 2, 3, or 4K, depending on your target monthly ad spend. But they'll basically set you up with different accounts. Some are better than others. There's tiers within these tiers, right? So once you get into the threshold of being a agency, right, at this level, there's different privileges based on your actual total volume spent.
Makes sense. Totally makes sense. I mean, well, the question is then, how do you find these guys? Similar as the profiles, just looking Facebook groups.
There's a lot of people out there that are middlemen getting a cut of the resell and like the introduction. The thing is, these are going to vary in quality, just like profiles, right? So depending on who you're working through, you might get scammed. You might have a really shitty agency where you either you're overpaying, or you'll have to wire transfer cash in advance, right? So it's like how cell phones used to be. You have to like prepay the card and then you use the damn phone. It was stupid. So that's how it works. Because they're working off a credit line, they can't take the risk of you adding a credit card to one of their ad accounts and then you canceling your credit card after and then they're on the hook for the ad spend. So it makes sense. It's fair. But what I'm saying is a lot of them won't actually credit your account until cash clears from a wire transfer, which can take, if you do it over a weekend, that can make it a 2 to 4 day process, right? Which kills if you're scaling a good product. So general recommendation is, Dayu, I'm sure that you have some really good contacts. I have some as well. Work through someone you trust that has access to these, right? Like that's the biggest thing I could recommend. Like, and ideally someone that's like, even better would be if they're spending their own money on them too, you know?
Yeah, actually, have you ever met Nicholas George before? You might call him.
I haven't.
It might be Nicholas Carter. He uses different last names as well. But yeah, but you know what? I should actually connect you as well. You know, so he is actually a long time EcommOps client. He's been just kind of farming accounts and like kind of creating each accounts for his own use, and he kind of started a side business on that. And you know, he seems like he knows what he's doing. So I should connect you guys sometime as well. But group members, I'll post his name down later as well. You know, he's a good source. He's not going to be the cheapest. You know, he's not like he's not going to be the cheapest, but I think that he's going to be pretty trustworthy. So I'll post that resource as well. All right. So here's a big question, actually. Do you use Hyros? What do you think about Hyros?
From all my friends that have used it, I haven't heard anything. I've heard more average and negative than positive. I don't know if that's just they weren't using it to its fullest extent. But the thing is, Facebook doesn't, from my understanding, Facebook still does not post back the attribution within the ads manager. You're looking at everything on Hyros's platform. So theoretically, the Facebook, they are collecting the data still, just as a side note. Theoretically, they're not, and they're not getting that information. It's just helping you make better decisions, but their algorithm theoretically is not getting access to all the data. There are other things that are coming out that are better. I'm getting in a little bit early with one that it's hard for me to explain this. This is not my area of expertise, but from the way it's been explained to me, it's an app that's going to go on my store. And there's the difference between first party data and third party data. And I believe it's Facebook is, correct me if I'm wrong, Facebook is third party data. Would that be correct?
I think so. I believe so.
So whatever Facebook is categorized as, that's why they cannot actually capture that data and technically legally post it back at this point, or they'll be delisted from the App Store. So this app that I'm going to be testing that these guys developed, it sets up servers on your Shopify store where it collects the data on your behalf, which is technically first party, which can be posted back. So they're actually going to integrate with our ads managers, and they're going to post it back as offline conversion events, right? So it's like the API integration, but better. And it's going to actually post back in the ads manager. So you're going to see accurate, full reporting like we had prior iOS. I haven't tested it yet. I should be in the next few weeks though.
Got it. Yeah. And I mean, I'll just add as well, Hyros is like, without giving my opinion on Hyros, I mean, Hyros doesn't solve like the Facebook account issues, right? I mean, it somewhat maybe helps with the tracking issues, but I think that these days, like there are a lot of ways, to kind of to still do well. Like I said at the start, a lot of our big clients, they just do like broad open targeting. They just focus on creative, and that's been working quite well, right? So just because you can't like target the exact same way, just because you can't like do a whole bunch of fancy lookalikes and have it work the same as before, doesn't mean that it can't work. But still, like Hyros doesn't really solve like the probably the more important problem is just how do you actually continue to advertise, right? And then now let me see. So there's also a question about this is a little bit of an unrelated question, but I'll quickly answer this. What is the next best platform? I'm assuming off of Facebook, so I'll just kind of give my quick thoughts. A lot of our clients are doing really well with TikTok. Obviously the ad format is different. TikTok is doing really well if your product and your creatives are a match for it. If you want to dance for your product, I'm sure it'll help as well, right? TikTok is doing really well, and Google generally, Google Shopping, for example, it does do well, but Google is a little bit more of a middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel strategy. Like it's not as good for kind of impulse purchases, which is probably a lot of what your brands are. All right, so let me see. Now we went through a lot already. We have like 8 minutes left. anything else that you think is super valuable for people? And by the way, in these last few minutes, comment if you have any questions, comment if you have any problems with your Facebook accounts that we could talk about. Jay Anello asked, well, Commently, I don't know what that means exactly. Commonly, is that a service?
It's a high roast competitor. I don't want to give an opinion. I haven't used it. I've seen their ads though. I haven't looked deep into it though.
Got it.
It looks cool. It looks cool. Good branding so far. That's all best I got for you.
Got it. All right. Yeah. So anything else that you think is valuable for the group to know that we haven't touched upon yet?
Have the confidence that there's always going to be a way with Facebook. Obviously, they're broken right now. They're not going to just stop letting us advertise. That's a revenue stream. Like that just wouldn't make any sense. If you just have being on Facebook and being alive on Facebook is a competitive edge today, in my opinion. So I think it's unless TikTok's giving you 5 ROAS every day and your break even is 1.5 or something like that, I don't think abandoning Facebook is a wise decision. Just my opinion, like, because there's a lot of people quitting, which is great, less competition. There's always going to be a way though, if you're committed to it, always. And it is the best platform still, hands down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the most scalable for sure, if you can scale, obviously, right? Anoop has a question. How can we set the proxies to multi-login? Is that more of a technical specific question?
Yeah, check my e-commerce wolves YouTube video or YouTube channel. I have videos on multi-login.
Okay. Yeah. John's going to just just comment below later, with your YouTube channel, any resources, and just look out for that, everyone. All right. So Jefferson, do you recommend $50 budget for 3 days on the first day of testing to avoid any restrictions? Maybe this is, more of a, I guess, like I don't know if the dollar amount actually matters, $50 budget for 3 days on the first day of testing to avoid any restrictions.
It's the thing is you got to think of anything new you're setting up. It's going to be the most sensitive in the first 2 to 3 weeks of usage. So it's not so much about like every time you launch a new product, 3 weeks, 3 months from now, do you need to follow the same kind of patterns? It's really just if you get through the weeds of those first few weeks and get up to like, let's say $100, $200 a day in ad spend, you're pretty much free to do anything. Aside, I wouldn't recommend you jump like big budgets, like 5K budgets until you're like probably 2 to 3 months in. Big budgets are triggering themselves, but once again, you're going to be under the most scrutiny in the first 2 to 3 weeks.
Got it. Makes sense. All right. Yeah. So, you talk a little bit about your clients, your service. I mean, what is it? What do you actually do to help your clients, and what can you do to help folks in the group as well?
Yeah. So if you're looking for a full system build out, we basically set everything up for you. We'll do the multi-login, the proxies, the warm up. We'll replace any accounts. If anything breaks in the first few weeks, we offer a 60-day guarantee. But within about 2 weeks, we hand over a system you can use yourself and support you for the 60 days following that. But most people join my Inner Circle program, which is a combination of our course that shows you the step-by-step technical setup, any hacks, tricks, anything that is current, that because remember, like things will break in the algorithm. You'll have little windows to do cool stuff. So it's always cutting edge with that. But the most valuable thing, in my opinion, is the Discord channel, where we're chatting about these things every single day too. I give immediate updates in there with any patterns we see, and I do weekly Zoom calls as well for that group. I didn't want to really offer it as just like a standalone course, mainly because, as you know, when there's like hacks and tricks, and then thousands of people start doing them, Facebook typically patches them. So that's a large part of it. But also, I know there's going to be a million questions because this stuff is pretty complicated. Like I wish we had 3 hours to talk about this. It's not being able to provide like that layer of support. I feel like it's a big disservice to people. So so it's a community is really what I provide, with tons of up-to-date information, strategies, and tactics.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that it's just like strategies always change. And just like a flat out course is not going to work. And by the way, like I know that a lot of folks out there are going to be like, oh, this guy has a program, the guy has a course, whatever. The thing is, like, look, I think that there is a lot of crap out there. I'll just be very honest with you, like a lot of crap courses, a lot of crap programs, a lot of regurgitating what's out there. I wouldn't be inviting John here if I didn't really think that he is legit. It's not going to be like it's obviously going to be some cost, right? I mean, obviously your inner circle is not free, there's going to be some cost to it, but hey, I feel like some of this stuff, whether it's John Castro. Oh, and by the way, another great example is Alex Fedotov. He's a good friend of ours. I know that you're in his program as well.
He's awesome.
Like, he has a program as well. And I always recommend that because it is amazing and it changes people's businesses. And I think this is something that could be very similar with what you do here as well, right? I mean, you just said yourself, you spend like $10,000, $20,000, like just scanned by profile sellers, right? So, that's a lot of, pain and money that, people could be avoiding as well. So yeah, definitely, I definitely suggest that you guys reach out to John. How do they actually reach out to you?
I'll drop a link in the comments. Start with my free stuff, my YouTube. I got like little lead magnet thingies with PDFs that give you really good tips and stuff. Start with that, and then like I'm not gonna get on the phone and hard sell you. We got some really cool stuff we could do together where it's done for you, done with you. But yeah, like I know this is a big problem. I'm committed to solving it. Like I genuinely enjoy seeing someone message me being like, dude, I wasn't able to generate income for the last 3 months. Now I'm like scaling again. Thank you. Like that's what motivates me. Excuse me. So if you want to be like up to date on what is and isn't working, then, reach out. You'll see links to booking calls and stuff on my YouTube channels and stuff like that. But I'll drop some in the comments as well.
Yeah. And actually a quick comment from Adil. I was restricting myself and joined John's program, was able to get back in and also learn how to verify 8BMs as well. So, complement to your program as well. So it makes sense. All right, actually, there are a couple other just quick questions we'll just address before the time is over. Merrick Widra, okay, so I guess 2 related questions. Any tips for product testing strategy when attributions doesn't work well now? And also any ways to micro test campaigns now when so many data is missing in an ad account? So I'll actually help answer that too as well, because I have a lot of experience talking to my clients. I don't know if you want to micro test. I mean, it's like, these days actually, with tracking not perfect, you want bigger audiences, basically. I hear, I mean, like generally, like people just test broad, like doesn't matter what kind of product you're selling, just test broad, like no interest, and just test the creatives and just test like the offer, right? And if it doesn't work, just move on. Right. Focus on like more individual ad sets, for the products themselves, the creators themselves, and, don't fine tune it because, I'll tell you, fine tuning does not work these days. Like it's just going to hold you back. Better, a larger audience is better. All right. Yeah. So let me see.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, please do.
Product is king, creative is queen. Those two, that's going to do most of the legwork for you. It's easy to get obsessed over like driving another 10% to AOV or cutting CPA 10% or whatever. Generally, like think of it, the best example I always give is like, if you were the guy selling masks during the pandemic, it just worked. It didn't matter what you did. You could have had image ads and that would have been getting you like $5 to $10 cost per conversion, right? Because of the demand, the product was key and the creatives were secondary to that. So if you always have that front of mind, you'll find a way with something that's working.
Yeah, and actually to wrap that up, I'm gonna show you this little guy. This little guy is Cody. All right, this is the brand that went on Shark Tank last year. This is a little kid's toy, right? I mean, the target is for parents of like 7 years old and under. So it was actually doing really, really well. And then iOS hit and all the lookalikes, all the specific targeting just stopped working. And good news, I have a network of great clients who gave me advice. And like, yeah, just try broad targeting. I'm like, broad targeting for this thing? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I need to target parents, So this is actually a rather niche type of product. Like you have to be a parent, you have to be a family member that has a child that wants something like this. And I tried out just completely no interest targeting. I'm probably running at like 3-4x ROAS right now and just focusing on the creatives, right? So obviously like mass is a perfect example because everyone wants it, but not everyone wants this, but still broad targeting actually worked. And we just really focused on the creative. Obviously, I like to think it's a great product as well. So really just focus on that. Don't worry too much. I mean, every big client tells me when they give me advice, just honestly, like, just don't worry about targeting. I mean, actually, don't target too narrow. That's the key, but don't worry so much about trying to get detailed there. If you can't get your creative and offer actually working, just with broad targeting, like especially these days, you're not going to get it working if you try to like, narrow your audience down to very specific things. All right, well, John, well, thank you so much for joining us. A lot of valuable advice. One thing that I take away from this is that, I mean, you even mentioned you wish this whole webinar was 3 hours long, but unfortunately we don't have that time. But it's like, we talked about so many things, but like the actual details are what actually matters, so definitely look out for John's resources, learn as much as possible by yourself, right? Do what you can by yourself. But honestly, I think that if you want to work with someone that can really kind of help you out and have a community to give you advice, reach out to John as well. I think they have a great program. And yeah, so John, if anyone else any comments, I'm sure people are going to watch this live afterwards as well, because it's going to go on Facebook and save there. So if there's any comments, if you have any other questions for John, just feel free to comment here as well. And John, if you don't mind, the next couple of days, you can kind of see what people are talking about and answer directly. And yeah, feel free to DM John, feel free to, he put his link down here. Moderators, don't don't delete this stuff as spam, just to let everyone know there, it's actually legit. All right. Well, thank you so much, John. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks to you, everyone, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.